So, why not Helm? First of all, I have to clarify that this is not about judging Helm, if it's good or bad, and it's especially not a suggestion if you should use Helm or not. But I'm working on multiple projects and I'm asked multiple times why don't I provide Helm charts or why don't I use Helm charts? And this is what I would like to explain here. So first of all, it depends from the use case. I have two main use cases. One is the development of Apache Ozone. I deploy it in a lot of way, different settings, different configurations, secure, unsecure, AJ, non-AJ to Kubernetes. So one project, very different ways to deploy, performance tests, and so on. My other use case is this Flocker project where I create Docker containers and Kubernetes resource files to deploy Apache Big Data projects to Kubernetes in different way. It's slightly different because it's also about a different type of deployment because sometimes I need Kafka, sometimes it's enough to use Ozone as a storage, sometimes I need and HDFS and HBase and so on. So it's also a very flexible environment. And to be honest, I started with Helm. I tried to use it, but I had some problems with Helm chart. So let's create a Helm chart. It's a test chart, and a very initial chart will be generated here. And yeah, that's my first problem, the templates. You can see that we have templates. So you can hate or love YAML files. I have no problem with the YAML files at all, but it has a structure, right? It's a very clear structure what we have. But with Helm chart, we are just using it as a very dumb txt file. It doesn't matter what is included, we are just rendering, and after that it will be parsed. And this is the reason why we need all of this identification. So it couldn't work if you use different number here, because this line should be indented with the right amount of spaces. And I had a lot of problem with debugging all of this identification because I just copied the labels to here, but in that case, the number also should be modified. So what can we do instead of this one? So in this example, I'm using flexible, which is somewhat similar to the customize, but I created it because I needed more flexibility. So let's create and test app. And the only thing what I need is just some directories where I can import Kubernetes resource files from. So let's search for the sources. These are just Git repositories, nothing fancy packaging or so on. So let's choose this one. This is a repository and I can clone it and search for the available subdirectories which contain some Kubernetes resource YAML files. So I'm cloning it right now, and after that I can just import, let's say I need this Ozone one, and I can say generate, and I have all of the plain old YAML files. I can commit them to a GitOps repository and so on. But we are talking about transformations. So the interesting part is that it's not a txt file, but I can say that, okay, let's have some transformations and use the add, which means that I'm just adding something to the structure, to the metadata labels. And let's say it's a foo bar label. So I have this final descriptor. It means that when I import the YAML files from the Ozone file, I need these transformations. So I can just regenerate all of the files. And if I check any of them, the foo bar label is supposed to be there. So I can modify everything here, right? Okay, and that's the question, because with Helm chart, it's not easy to modify everything, because what can I modify in Helm chart? Well, it depends. Depends which oh, depends what is defined to be modifiable. So if I check the deployment YAML file, you can see that we have a lot of condition here. So for example, the image pool secret can be modified. But for example, the name of the HTTP, it's not possible to modify. The affinity can be modified. So there are clear extension points which can be modified. And the name of these extension points, the name of the variable to use, well, it's just a convention to use the same name. It depends from the Helm chart. So usually when I started to use a Helm chart, I just checked the source code very soon to understand which can be modified. And when something was not possible to edit, then yeah, I was just stuck. It was not possible to modify at all. But with a more flexible tool, it's very easy to do everything, right? Because I can modify, it's my responsibility to modify all of the parts. And I know that this is just plain old Kubernetes. I don't need to remember fancy value names, which will be transformed somehow to Kubernetes YAML path element, because I know what I would like to modify, and I can just modify it. So that was my second problem. And the third problem is that it comes from my second use case. So I talked about that I would like to use multiple applications or projects, and it's not very obvious to use with Helm chart, especially as I would like to. I have some generic configuration. For example, if I use a specific storage, I would like to define all of the deployments, all of the stateful set to use that specific storage type. With flexible, actually, it's quite easy because I can just search for an other source. Source search. And okay, let me add, for example, an HBase to this one. So I have it here. And I can say that, okay, I also need an HBase. And I can say that this transformation should be applied all of these, not just the Ozone was HBase, but this is in the top level. So let's apply everything to HBase 2. And now I can generate. And okay, HBase should be cloned as well. And I have all of the required resources files, HBase and Ozone together. And if I check any of them, the foobar label is supposed to be added. But it's not just about label. You can imagine that if I would like to use, for example, a local disk provisioner, or I would like to use some very specific node placement policy, I can just add to all of the components together. I don't need to configure the Helm charts one by one, or just create some Uber Helm chart with dependency and so on. I can just import everything in the code and I apply all of the transformations. So at least for me, it seems to be more flexible and easier for me. To be honest, I started to write an application which generates the Helm chart, and after a while, I just found that it's easier to generate the resource files, and it's more GitOps friendly because I have everything for the Kubernetes, pure Kubernetes YAML file, and it's easier to debug. I can modify on the fly the image names, everything. So these are the main reasons why I don't create Helm charts for Apache Ozone or Flocker, because I prefer to use structured transformations. I prefer to transform everything or independent what are the predefined extension points, and I prefer to use multiple projects together So it's not just one project, which is the unit, but for me, the unit is just the YAML files. We can just combine them together. So thank you very much. If you are interested, you can check the Flexible app, and we will continue from here next time.